Right. This is James Sornock. Welcome to the Coder Kids podcast. Today on the program, we have Alexander Fernandez. He is the founder and CEO of Streamline Media Group. And it used to have a different name, right? Is that right?
Yeah, well, hi. Thanks for having me on. The company actually started off as Streamline Studios, and
Mm-hmm.
then as the company got larger, we basically had to embrace Streamline Media Group in order to encompass all the business activities. Streamline Studios is still around. It's actually 20 years old now, and it's one of our
Yeah.
business divisions at the company.
Yeah. So I definitely checked out your website. Just to give parents a little bit of context, I was interested in having Alexander on today because he's been in the industry now for a long time, and he's been in this entrepreneurial space. And we've had traditional game developers on that run their own studios, like Butterscotch Shenanigans. You can check out that episode. But Streamline Studios or Streamline Media Group is a little bit different because y'all do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Y'all have a lot of companies kind of underneath the umbrella. And so I was interested to see what kind of other jobs are there other than like a proper game studio, which you do have underneath your umbrella, but you also do some other things and work on some bigger projects. So that's just to give a little bit of context. Um, but we always like to start off with a question, what got you originally interested in technology? I mean, we're talking, could be when you're in kindergarten or whatever. What are your kind of early memories?
Yeah, those are great questions. I mean, honestly, the journey to get to where we are today, especially for in my life, started off with getting a Nintendo when I was 7 years old. My aunt convinced my mom to buy it because it was better
An
than the
NES?
babysitter. Yeah, an NES, the original Nintendo Entertainment System. I'm sure for anyone who's basically 38 to 50,
Yeah.
maybe 55 out there, probably can relate to this. I was 7 when the NES came out. So we're talking like 88, 87, 88.
Mm-hmm.
And my aunt says this is cheaper than a babysitter and it'll suck in your kid's attention. And that's literally what it did. So
I
basically,
love how brutally honest your aunt
it
is.
was straight up. I mean, it's like this. I mean, we're immigrants, so the reality is, it's like, look, you can sit here and, let your kids be on the street, or you basically give them something to basically focus them in on and look at it. And I got to be honest with you, the seeing and experiencing of a video game was it was mind blowing. Being able to play something and interact with it on a television. At the time it was like Legend of Zelda, Excite Bike, the original Super Mario Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Playing these games, and at that time it started to basically give a curiosity to me and my twin brother. I'm an identical twin, by the way,
Oh,
and
okay.
we were looking at this and just wanting to know, well, how do you make it? And that's really how it starts, which is like you
Mm.
get into something, you start looking at it, you start interacting with it, and then you start questioning, well, how is it made? And at the time, Nintendo had this thing called Nintendo Power, which was like this magazine that would
Oh,
come out.
yeah.
People still read magazines, and you'd thumb through it, and it would be explaining to you like the designs, the like the hints and tips, tricks
Cheat
on how to
codes and
master the game, cheat codes, right? What is it, like up, down, left, right, A, B, A, and like all those little things. And
select
so
start.
you'd
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, right. And we would get into it, and then it just started to spur this concept of, well, maybe this is something that we can do. And so, video games became kind of a part of life at the time. So from 7, 8, 9, 10, uh, just fascinating into technology. And then at one moment in time, I'm a kid of the 80s, late 80s and 90s, and basically our school ended up getting, the original Mac, right? So we
Oh,
had
wow.
these, we
Yeah.
had the, we had the Apple IIs, then we went to the Mac Classic, and then basically what starts showing up is when they started to get color in the screens, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, wow, it was like, this is it. And at that point, I don't know why they were letting 11, 10, and 11-year-olds with $5,000 computer systems, which probably in today's currency was more like 11,000, and
Yeah.
they're just letting us touch them, right? And you're just like, this is awesome. So I'll stop there because that was a lot, but that's exactly how it started.
Yeah, I definitely have some memories that are similar. I'm a little bit younger than you are. I'm 30, but we definitely, my elementary school had Apple IIs, and they would let you play the games, like, and being a kid, like I had no idea of the cost or the scope or what educational policy needed to happen. But I do think it was the right decision. I do think it really helped a lot of kids out to have those in there and to kind of pique that interest.
Well, I think that's the thing is like, and I grew up in Utah, and I
Oh,
grew up in a
okay.
place called Orem Provo, and it's interesting because it was a real.
That's where I was born.
r-
So
You're born
I
in
was born in
Provo.
Provo. Yeah.
Okay, well, I grew
So
up in Orem, and I was also born in Provo. So I
yeah.
mean, you not now Provo Orem, but Provo Orem in the '80s was like orchards, cows, real
Yeah.
river runs through it. Right? There's nothing there
That's so
except
funny. Yeah.
for Novell and WordPerfect, these
That's
two
right.
startup
It's
companies that
absolutely
come out
right.
of nowhere, right? And so you have and for everyone out there who's like, what are they talking about? It's like WordPerfect was the original Microsoft Word until
Yeah.
Microsoft slaughtered them, and Novell, well, was the original enterprise networking system until Microsoft also slaughtered them.
Yeah.
And this is that thing, right? So in Utah, and this is the one thing that was great about it, is that as much as it was cows and you know nothing, there was
Basically.
technology too, right? You
Yeah.
had rural and this small little techie thing going on that just really permeated into the schools.
Yeah, no, so that's where it was. It was definitely I was in Orem. I was raised in Orem, and then I went to Springville. But that's so funny to hear you talk about that. I remember going Easter eggs hunts in an orchard. So that it really is full
This
circle.
is super weird. Where did you grow up in Orem? Where were you?
It was like goodness. Man, this is such an aside. Most of our customers are like in Texas where I live now, but
Yeah.
yeah, so I don't even it was in the Sharon Stake boundaries.
Yeah,
Um,
I know. Okay, yeah. So I grew up on
so
8th North, right off of
okay,
so State Street, 8th North. It's basically towards Timpanogos.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
literally, like the only
Couple
thing.
blocks. They were a
Yeah, you
couple
were. I
blocks
mean, yeah,
apart,
like
and a couple
you.
years. Yeah.
Yeah, like well, yeah, a couple years. I mean, when did you leave Utah, or when did you jump out?
Yeah. So we moved to Texas like 2004. So I was
Okay,
there
yeah, I left
till then.
in 99. I bounced out in '99, and then
Okay.
basically didn't go back.
Right. Yeah. That's
So, yeah,
that does happen, especially with
yeah.
Houston. Houston's got this great pulling force where
Oh
everyone
yeah,
comes to Houston for jobs. There are very few people who are like born in Houston. You could find them, but like you have to look.
I didn't even
It's
know you were in Houston. It's a great city.
yeah. Oh, I
That's a
love
lot of
it.
fun out there. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, I had a great time there. It's a great place.
The only major city without zoning laws, so you can like run a business out of your house or live in your
Texas.
business, whatever. It's
I
it's free
love it.
country. Yeah, it's
That's
great.
perfect. Yeah, that sounds like
So
Texas. That's awesome. That's cool,
so
man.
yeah. So that's great to hear about your history. I mean I remember my dad talking about, and we'll get out of the weeds soon, parents, I promise. But my dad was like big into Word Perfect, and he's super geek. He had an Amiga, and then
Yeah.
Mac. As those came out later, and I'd play on it on that, and I had a similar kind of experience where I wanted to become a computer programmer. This is like in junior high for me, and
Yeah.
there were not options. I bought like some Windows program that would allow you to program, but I was never able to figure it out. And so I just gave up and went back to playing Super Smash Brothers, basically. And fast forward and now I'm running an after school company, right, where we teach kids how to code in after school and summer camp and private lessons and stuff like that. So
Super
um,
cool, man.
it is cool. It's a lot of fun. It's
Yeah.
pretty low margins, but we have a lot of fun and a lot of joy. And I love to be in the education space, but not like in the traditional sense. So going back to you and your journey, how did you get from Super Mario Brothers Excite Bike, these classic games to something where you're building your first game, like you said, Gumming Chronicles, I think in an interview a while ago.
Yeah, yeah. So
What
I mean,
bridged the
this.
gap?
So here's the thing. I mean, going back to the growing up in Utah.
Yeah.
At one moment in time, you basically started to grow out of the Nintendo type games because the reality is that it was only going to go so far. You had basically the NES, and then you had the Super Nintendo, and Nintendo makes great games and it's fantastic. But as I started getting older and my friends got older, we wanted to get into more. hardcore. And in this
Uh-huh.
case, Wolfenstein came out when I was in fourth grade. Doom comes out when I'm in sixth grade or seventh grade, actually. And then by that point, we're building our own rigs. So we're the nerdy kids that are going down, buying component pieces,
Oh
putting
wow.
things together so we can play TIE Fighter. Remember playing TIE Fighter, X-Wing, buying our own, when you used to have to buy your own sound cards because, you
Yeah.
didn't have it. It was all peripheral, right? And then building computers. And so this is the part where basically there was a moment where my mom, when we were about 12, she came home with a computer and she goes, listen, this was again the same strategy. It's like, I don't want you guys to get into trouble outside. So here's a computer. I know you like games. I think if you learn this, this will basically give you an opportunity. And I'll never forget this because this is like 9 months of salary that my mom has saved to
Mm.
effectively buy this Packard Bell 486 SX. 25 megahertz is this thing, right? And my brother and I are
Whoa.
like, oh my goodness. And, my mom says one thing, you break it, you have to fix it. And of course, what's the first thing we do is break it, because this is command line, right? This is MS DOS. Windows 95, please. It's Windows 3.1. And then even then, everything you're doing to load, and this was the key, to load a game, you literally had to optimize memory, do runtime commands, and there was, I mean, what manual? It was like, the manuals were thick, but they didn't tell you anything. They were filled with all the story and the backstory. So you're learning to manipulate a operating system, learning how a computer works where there is no easy interface,
Yeah.
and that's teaching you how to use a computer. And this was the funnest part about it. We didn't even realize we were learning because we were just trying to make the games work.
Yeah.
But through the process of making it work, we learned a skill which at that moment in time, and remember this is 1993, the internet is just kind of a thing, and we're already dialing up using modems, calling into local BBSs, basically uh, using the Orem Public Library. You
Yeah.
could dial into them, drop into the shell, into Unix, and then telnet everything. So we were downloading files on their T1s and then
What?
collecting the files. Yeah, this was the thing. So the only way, because remember one thing is basically like we're using like if we're lucky, it was a 14.4 modem, and at some points 9600 baud. So we would have to go to the library. We would drop into the shell, have downloaded our downloaded software, and then took it home, right? Because they had a T1, which is basically 24 telephone lines put together. So we're
Interesting.
basically grabbing that. So we're learning how to do this, and then all of a sudden, people are like, "Oh, technology." So now I'm getting a job building and fixing computers, setting up networks. My friends and I in the evenings are doing network parties where we bring our computers all together, connecting them.
Yeah.
I mean, this is real nerdy stuff, right? And
Yeah,
we're doing
you're an like for parents listening, this is what an early adopter sounds like. So if you don't understand all the terminology, yeah, I mean, it was a lot harder to get into back then, I think, in some
there was no
aspects.
there was no user interface that was simple to use. So I
No.
mean, and for parents, and we're probably at the same age as we are or a little bit older. I mean, this is like your AV club from your junior high school with computers that are really big, and these are the kids no one wants to talk to. And technology's not cool. We're a bunch of nerds, but I will tell you something. Within this connecting of systems and this little universe of people that were really into fixing things and programming and developing, video games was propelling us forward because it was a combination of art, engineering, technology, design. And this is where we start learning how to modify games, what you call modding. So when Doom
Oh
2
well,
came
yeah.
out, you could start modding the actual game. So we started to build our own levels, started to change the art, started to basically put funny things in the game, stupid things, amateurish stuff that you want to do as a child and
Yeah.
as a young adult, and then seeing it come to life. So this opportunity to take something that you've just bought, modify it, put your creative liberties inside of it, starts to show you, oh wow, we can start building stuff. Oh wow, we can make our own stuff. And the imagination, especially when you're young, you don't know what you can't do. So you just start doing everything. And that's
Mhm.
where the idea of creating products started to form into our minds. So the way Gundam
Okay.
Chronicles came together was basically my friend's brother started a mod based on Doom 2 that went to Quake, that then went on to Duke Nukem, and
Mm.
we're jumping generations, and all of us are trying to make this work. And ultimately, it's teaching us how video games work, which, by the way, this is the early 90s and mid 90s. So this industry is nascent. It's growing, but it's not like what it is today. It's a
Yeah.
$200 billion industry today. I think back then this was probably like maybe $100 million industry. There was no way that it was a billion at that point in time, but it was starting to accelerate faster. So I think this is something where literally the opportunity to be a part of that space and learn at the early adopter phase just made us have to be a little bit harder, a little bit more, let's say, adventurous and
Mm.
willing to deep dive because we had to teach ourselves everything. And again, you're learning as you grow. So that's really how this kind of came to be.
Wow. Okay. That is the best answer to the question I could have. I couldn't imagine. Anyway, one question that came up just as you're saying this, as you're tinkering, as you're modding Doom 2. For those of you who have kids that mod Minecraft, this all started back then. But you can essentially mod almost any game. Some games are more friendly to creating mods for or modding than others, and this allocating memory for a game you were talking about is really interesting. You can still do that for Minecraft, actually. You can allocate. I think I've allocated 32 gigabytes of RAM for Minecraft, which is just absurd. Um, but there's a specific mod I'm trying to run, right, which is a ray traced, thing that's
Yeah, making it
that
beautiful.
yeah. I mean, it's using the full strength of the U.S. military behind it. I mean, it's crazy. I got my hands on a 3070, so anyway, I got lucky. But
Yeah.
the question that I had was, what's your philosophy when it comes to computers and even objects? I think recently in the news, I guess in the past like half decade, the right to repair movement has kind of come up,
Yep.
and there's I'm kind of on the fence because um, I used to be a big Apple fanboy, where we love to see the new iPhones come out, and there was new technology coming out all the time, and way before, with the iMac and whatnot. And obviously, my dad with the Apple II, I didn't know what I was talking about. I was just like a tiny, tiny child. Um, but you start to see stuff like anti-competitive measures. You start to wonder, you know, if you can't modify the game, if it's just locked down, if there's a touch interface, you can't put code in anywhere sideways. Um, do you think that can be destructive, or do you think people are losing out on opportunities, or do you think that's okay as long as there's an alternative, an alternative system like Android or a Linux based phone or software where people can have okay, that's not a very clear question. What I'm trying to say is, do you think overall lockdown, like walled garden ecosystems, are overall good, or is it always better to have it be like have the ability to modify games and modify software and have that kind of available to anyone?
So I think the thing is like this is that had everything been walled off when I started, then I would have never gotten here. So
Hmm.
my initial kick is, walled gardens from a learning perspective, unless the tools are there to allow people to learn, then I think are not good. I don't think it's good. So the thing is, I guess if you're
Hmm.
going to create an ecosystem that has lockdown, then you have an obligation to create something that allows people to discover and learn. And I think this is something where those companies have to realize, and they themselves came from generations where they had to piece things together in order to build it. And yeah, there's a
Yeah.
philosophy of, well, we made it perfect, so you should learn. But the reality is that you don't learn unless you have the ability to tinker. I mean, technology is a tinkering discipline. You're always trying to do something. You're always trying to push it. Yes, there are people that try to hack it and security and all that stuff, and I get that. But the reality is that there's the other side of people trying to figure things out. So I think that in the end, right to repair, I'm a big proponent of it. I think you should be
Hmm.
able to fix things. I think that's just not only is it good for the environment, it's good for the fact that I don't need an
Yeah.
iPhone 300. I just need a phone. And then
Yeah.
the flip side is not everyone can keep up with paying for this stuff, so we got to be realistic about economic standing. Then the other side of this comes down to a simple thing that I think planned obsolescence, even though it's not, no one's going to say they do that, but you do it when you basically set up release timelines where every 18 months, every 12 months, every 9 months, something is coming out. And yeah, granted, we can say, oh, it's only for those that adopt it, but the reality is there's almost an economic planned obsolescence that comes in, which I think creates a disproportionate burden on people who are not going to be able to get in there. And I think, moreover, as well, you start to create that separation of talent and separation of people who can come into the industry. And I think that is something that we do not want as a technology sector. We want everyone to come in and work because we can't find enough people. That's also the other
That's true.
side of it. So, in the end, it's a balance. Of course, I don't take away from the fact that these companies need to make money, and I get they protect their interests, but there's protecting your interests, and then there's just exterminating everything else. I think balance is absolutely achievable if you think about it from your core planning of what you're trying to do as an organization. And if you're going to have the walls be very high, then you better have the gates of education and the gates of learning and the tools to support the door to let people in. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we're almost in complete agreement there. I mean, I'm kind of guilty as charged. Like, I have an iPhone, like 10R or whatever. It's not the newest one. It's fine. I think I think there used to be a little bit more hype around this sort of 18-month cycle, and iPhone 12 just came out,
yeah, 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 absolutely. It came out
and
like last year.
iPhone 12 mini. Anyway, got updates and whatever. And I used to watch those religiously, right? Like it was almost like I was going to church. I would go and I'd watch this whole thing and I'd get so excited. And I guess I've stopped. And I think there used to be a little bit bigger hype when there actually were serious advances in like every model. It seems like there's not, um, there's like cameras a little bit better. Maybe the battery is just like infinitesimally better, but it's not like you're not really getting that much new out of it, I think.
Well, no, and here's the thing: is that I'm a big Apple fan. I mean, I have all my Apple products. I'm in the Apple ecosystem. I mean, I love it. I love effectively things just working. I'm a big fan
Yeah.
of that. That's why yesterday's adventure of building this rig behind me was so interesting. I'm like, as I'm getting frustrated on an hour and a half trying to figure out why this thing isn't booting, only to discover, oh, basically what it was is DisplayPort has to be enabled in the BIOS first, or else you need to have an
Uh,
HDMI plug in it. That's the only way to see it, right? Hour and a half on that. And then this is where I catch myself saying, and this is why people spend thousands more buying Apple products
right.
because it
Right.
just works. I mean, and that's a little bit of it there. Yet, I'll take a step back and I will say one thing that in the end of the day, there's a thing about flexibility and something to be said about, it's great to try to predict what people want, but the reality is that, if I'm honest with myself, if it wasn't for the business, I wouldn't be keeping the updating cycle happening. I would be like,
Mhm.
why bother? I'll use my iPhone 6 and keep it on and let that be. I just want a telephone. I don't need anything
Mhm.
else. That, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
that's
Well, I that is really cool. I do want to talk a little bit about your work at
yeah, no worries.
Streamline. There's a lot to talk about there. I just played the demo for Bacon Switch. That was a bunch of fun. Um, so that was neat. Um, when it comes to actually working in the industry, let's start with, I guess you talked about it a little bit. You said you can't find enough people, right? In another interview, I want to quote you here. You said, if I could find it, said, I don't care if they went to school. We look for aptitude to learn, the desire to be the best that they can be. So, can you elaborate on that? I think you said it in a WOB interview.
Yeah. So here's the thing: is that you know, go back to my experience. I didn't learn this in school. Without computer. I mean, this was pure savage land. I was out there in out in the weeds with everyone, basically trying to figure out and establish something new. So from the standpoint of what I mean about not caring about people going to school, it's not a statement on education. It's more of a very straightforward thing that people learn in different ways.
Mm.
However, you acquire your knowledge, that is really basically up to you and the system that you decide to use to basically make you the best you can be. What I'm looking for is people's capability to learn. And what I have learned over the past 20 years of running this business, and then prior to that, was that ultimately in the end, someone's desire to learn and willingness to put the time and effort into it will yield more results than someone who is force fed something during a 4 year educational period, or maybe just their 12 years of high school, or in primary and secondary. uh, what I'm looking, and what really at this moment in time, pre-pandemic, I'm sorry, post-pandemic, we're not out of it yet, basically comes down to a simple thing that if you want it and you put the effort into it, chances are you will go further. And ultimately, within an organization like ours that's in technology, in gaming, that changes every 3 months, you need to
Yeah.
have elasticity of mind, meaning that you will bend yourself every which way, you will stretch yourself every which way, and not get tired of being pulled apart because you have to keep up. And this is the thing where the human mind, it is beautiful from that standpoint. It thirsts to learn, and if you don't, you get entropy. And this is
Yeah.
what we don't need to have happen. Not in technology, not in video, especially not in video games. You have to be a forever student. It's the only way to keep competitive and keep working within your field that you love to do.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking about it in terms of when my wife went to the farmer's market, she picked up these flowers and she brought them home, and they lasted for a week or whatever, and they were great for Easter, and then they were dead and attracting flies. And I was like, wow, like why would anyone ever buy flowers? I'm just not like, I like them. I like the way they look. It's just that they go bad so soon and they cost so much. And then I was like, but like that's also video games. Just the time scale is different.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying this thing now. It's fun. In my current social context, I like the challenge of it. And then it's gone. It's going to lose support. Maybe I should
Yeah.
give a shout out to archive.com or whatever. The online archive that stores all this stuff. I think I played like a Mac OS 6 game on my computer, on my previous like Windows computer, but it took like about 9 hours to get all the files correct and whatever. But if it weren't for like legitimate archives, outside of that, I mean, games are, in the historical sense, almost like ethereal. Like the systems that you program them for, they work for a number of years, they're supported for a number of years. Certain systems make an effort to make them backwards compatible or save the files, like Nintendo does, and PlayStation started. I think they were more into that in the beginning. Um, but ultimately, you're right. Like you have to learn the new stuff. You have to learn either new languages or new implementations or new games that people like because people's interests change, right? Like roguelikes. There was a game called Rogue, which was a text-based, right? Like the graphics were text, right? If I remember correctly.
What's it? Basically, ASCII art is what that is. That's
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah, yeah.
Which that'd be fun to see a little bit of a resurgence there, but and now roguelikes have basically exploded, and some games come in and out of popularity, but this all leads up to a question, which is Streamline's been in business for 20 years now. That's a long time. Most businesses, we're not talking technology, just most businesses fail within the first 5 years. It takes about 5 years to become profitable for any business anyway. In technology, I think the cycle is a little bit more vicious, although I don't know the statistics off the top of my head. But if I had to guess, like you can make a wrong bet and it'll sink you like really quickly.
Pretty much.
If you open a restaurant, you're probably not going to make a ton of money, but like people eat food, like you can pretty much count on that. With technology, if you make the wrong bet, like with WordPerfect, and your whole company buys into the idea of WordPerfect being like the superior software, like in a couple of years, you're going to have to switch to Word anyway because all the support got destroyed. So, how have you like not died, I guess, in 20 years, and how have you reinvented yourself?
I think the thing is, what it comes down to is that it goes back to the earlier statement of never stop learning, and never stop basically learning not just technology, but business, and looking at other industries and thinking about what you can do. So I think the one thing that basically came in here is that idea of every problem can be solved. It's really what you learn when you troubleshoot a computer, right? If you look at technology, there's always a solution because it's based on logic. There's a logic and there's an order of operation. There is basically something that must happen before something else will take place. That I have always applied towards the business. I have applied it towards how do we build our system? And I've looked at it and approached it from a systemic type of stance. But then the other side of it has been emotional intelligence. I mean, let's be clear, like the games are logical, but people are not. There's a understanding of humanity that has to be there. And I think this is the key. It's like, you look at it, you know, you want to be successful in business. It's not the hardware, it's not the hard skills, it's the soft skills. And soft skills are people skills, and the
Yeah.
ability to communicate, and the ability to have empathy and to seek to understand. Those are things that need to be there, and that is ultimately where I think school should be teaching those skills. Just like basic finance, those things should be taught, but ultimately this is the part where, as I look to all the mistakes I've made, and I've made tons of mistakes. I mean, hell, every day I make a mistake and I love to learn from it. But that is the thing that I embrace is, if I'm going to fail, let me fail hard and let me learn.
Hmm.
Let it be almost a near fatal blow, but not enough to really have killed me, as much as what it was for me to learn a very valuable lesson on how not to do that again. And I think this is the part where people, a lot, they basically think that they have to do it perfect, or that they have to be the smartest tool. And it's like, you don't have to be. You just have to be the hardest working. It's so simple. It's like, you just have to ask yourself a simple choice or question. How much crap are you willing to walk through? How much pain are you willing to tolerate, with a faith and a belief that it will work? Because in the end of the day, that is all this ever has been. There is no genius here. There is no basically, oh, inspiration and this. I mean, those are beautiful words, but the reality is, it's just saying, you know what, I'm going to walk to Mars. Let's just use that if you could, and just keep going and going and going and going. And, along the way, being entertained by what you see, and basically not letting setbacks set you back or hold you back, nor letting success get into your mind and poison you. It's a balance. And I think that's something that, in the end, if I can say one thing about Streamline and the journey, and really the most improbable journey, it's just basically realizing that, in the end of the day, you just got to be able to be flexible and take it as it comes. And then one day you blink and it's 20 years later. That's literally what it's felt like, even though
Wow.
there's been a lot of trying stuff in there. So that's how I
Yeah.
look at it.
Wow, that is some impressive stuff. I definitely I loved what you said specifically about, you wish that they taught in schools like this flexibility and these communication skills, the soft skills. Had a very sarcastic thought pop into my head, which was like, that would also take teachers that understood that and practiced it themselves. And I think a lot of school teachers don't necessarily. Um, but I can throw a little bit of shade. I'm a public, I was a public school teacher myself
Yeah.
before I came to Coder Kids. And just because all the teachers aren't taught to do soft skills now doesn't mean that it's not a possibility for the future, and that there are other options for education where soft skills might be more emphasized. But it is a little bit harder to kind of reason out a letter grade, right? So it's
Yeah.
it's like, well, if letter grades are really important to you, soft skills, it's really hard to just assign, well, you got an 85 in soft skills. Like, okay, sure. How did you
So,
grade them?
yeah. And so here's the thing. So let's imagine a world in which AI exists
Okay.
and bots are doing,
Like general
well,
AI you're talking about?
like we're talking about, like, artificial intelligence has basically been it's become pervasive and utilized across
Okay.
white collar, blue collar, every aspect of life is now using AI, which we know is coming. At
Sure.
this moment in time, the only thing human beings have now are their soft skills, because that is one place that they will not be able to get into. It's one simple thing. It's like, why is it that basically salespeople still exist? Let's be
Yeah.
honest about this. Sales. Well, I mean, we can say, we can throw shade at the salespeople. We can say whatever we want, but the reality is,
Sure.
there are very few people that have the tolerance to put up with nothing, nothing, nothing got done, or nine no's and one yes, that have the ability to effectively read someone's mood and then parlay that or parry it into something totally different to take the no into a yes. These are soft skills, and these are not just yes. Some people seem to have it naturally, but everyone has a skill similar to this that can be polished and grouped up. So if we're in education and we're in school and everyone is basically, yes, we're learning tech, but then we're not learning how to speak to each other. And then even worse, if we never actually do this, what we're doing right now, but we're just
Right.
texting each other, there's a problem. But yet
Mm.
the people who learn these soft skills, it's not like they're not going to be in demand. They will be the most in demand because ultimately in the end, even as we move towards decentralized organizations in which people take full responsibility to organize their tasks and basically complete projects, that's all soft skills. Software didn't make that happen. Computers aren't going to make that happen. My boss telling me to do something he's not even going to exist. They'll be gone.
Yeah.
It'll be that discipline, right? So this is where the educational institutions, yes, if you just want to let her grade, that's to measure a moment in time.
Sure.
But the reality, if I want to build you for success and give you a chance to actually be more than basically a letter grade when you were in 12 years old, I need to give you the skills to communicate, or else you're just, I mean, what prevents you versus the kid in New Delhi who wants it 6 times as bad as you do and is going to do whatever it takes? That's the level of competition we're at now, that I think a lot of people don't want to know, because the inconvenient truth is that unlike the baby boomers, our generation, millennials, zennials, and Gen Z, they truly are competing against the world, a
Yeah.
world in which education actually was funded. That's what's scary.
That's
So I
so true.
I mean, it's like it wasn't lip service. They actually have done it. And now that kid who lives in a place that's two-thirds less than where I live, he's coming for me. He's
Yeah.
coming for my kids. Not negatively, but that's the competition we've asked for.
Sure.
So there you go.
The flip side, I'm a terrible optimist, right? Is
Sure.
that
Be optimistic.
the service and the software that the kid from New Delhi
Yeah,
creates, you might be able to use, and that might enrich your life, right?
absolutely.
Like if anyone's ever used the Waze app, that's an Israeli creation. Um, like if we were to talk about the development teams of all of the apps and services that we'd use, we're talking about a truly international set of people. And
Yes.
actually, I mean, let's pivot straight into Streamline again. I mean, you've got, you said before, you got a Malaysian team.
Yeah.
How many people exactly work at Streamline Group? Like the
There's
whole thing?
180. There's 180 of us
Okay.
across Europe, Malaysia, so Asia, Southeast Asia, and
Mm-hmm.
the Americas.
Okay.
But to the point on basically of what you're saying about the international aspect of it, the optimism is true, because the reality is it's the promise of globalization. It's
Yeah.
the fact that everyone can participate and that anyone's intellect, anyone from any part of the world, can do something. And this is also the best part, because that kid in New Delhi or that kid in Malaysia can create something and participate in the global economy, whereas
Yeah.
before they may not have been able to. My point on this, though, is the fact that everyone must understand this is happening, because the reality is, like, when someone wakes up and says, "Oh, they ate my lunch," they didn't eat your lunch. You never wanted to eat it because you didn't want to acknowledge there was food in front of you. So this is the part where basically, when I look at, effectively the story of our business, over 20 years, we started the company in Amsterdam. We were in an apartment, four friends, $15,000. You know what? We were 20 years old. I was 20. I had hair. It was amazing. And we said, roll the dice,
I had
right?
hair
It's
when
like,
I was
yeah,
22.
you know what I mean? It's like I had beautiful curly hair. So I'm like, roll the dice, let's go. But the reality is that the business grew lockstep with the spread of technology going to the four corners of the world and effectively democratizing these new economies and allowing them to basically participate in the global economy. That in turn raised the standard of living to where when we got to Malaysia, we had kids that were making more than their families were making, because ultimately, in the way it looked like from the global economy standpoint, what they were effectively earning in wages had never been seen before,
Yeah.
because technology pays. And so if we put it in the American context, it's very simple. Your average tech worker at, let's say, video games, specifically the ESA, the Electronic Software Association, put out, the average video game employee is 120,000 a year. That's what they're making.
Mm-hmm.
Poverty level in the United States is effectively right now close, I think, of 31,000. Most of the medium is 51,000. But if you look at what just happened with COVID, anyone making 30,000 or less, the people, the 20-25% of those people that had lost their jobs were in the 30,000 or less category. Those jobs were wiped out. But yet at the same time, had you had a job in technology from any of this, you were more than likely safe. And more importantly, probably had the best year you ever had, because all of a sudden what you were doing had impact and mattered, and you could become part of the pajama class, which is stay at home and work behind your computer.
Right. Yeah.
That disparity is one of the main reasons why technology is so important to be taught at schools, but also to be taught within all types of communities. Because in the end of the day, let's be clear, if you're earning 70, 80, 90, 120,000 a year, you've transformed your life, the lives of your family, and anyone around you, because ultimately in the end, you're not feeling the bumps of the economy. And this is also something that's a truth that I think really when we go to school, we're not being taught that what you do with your mind is probably going to go 6 to 12 times more than what you could do with your own brute force and labor. And I think this is something that honestly in the
Yeah.
US, we got to get over this part of education and figure out how we make technology part of, your first language. It's not English, it's probably programming C++. And
Right.
it's when you're in first grade, so that you're fluent by the time you're 18. And then there you go. You got yourself a job that probably makes 6 times than what I make, but that's the reality, because that is the skills of tomorrow. And even not even tomorrow, it's today, right?
Yeah. It's today,
So
it's yesterday, it's going to be tomorrow too.
exactly.
Um, yeah, and that's
So
quick quick plug. We do private tutoring up through the college level. So if you want to, if you're a homeschooler, if you're doing public school, private school, charter school, we don't care, Uh, you're welcome to take the journey at any point. You know, I really, the longer I spent in the educational system, the more and more I believe that the best educational decisions are made between parents, teachers, and kids. And whenever possible, I would also include businesses or entrepreneurs in that equation. We, for instance, have like a 12-year-old intern who he's way too smart for his own good, and he's doing all kinds of Python, and his parents stopped being able to understand him because it all sounded Greek. And so, he reached out, and I interviewed him and his parent, and I was talking to his parent, and I was like, what do you get out of this? Are you sure you want him to be, working on curriculum and doing coding for us and stuff? And she's like, yeah, I've been encouraging him this whole time, but I stopped being able to understand him. So I'd love for him to have a place that he can contribute to. So, not naming any names, but he's going to be going somewhere, right? I definitely wasn't that smart when I was 12. Even if I was, I didn't have the same opportunities and the same tools. But, he's got his head on his shoulders, and he's going to go places. Again, with the soft skills, right? The technical and the soft together matter. So that is fascinating. I do hope, along with you, Alexander, that our education system can change. And if it doesn't change, then we just do it on our own,
I mean, that's what's happening right now, if you think about it. I mean, I think that ultimately, in the end of the day, the where we stand in our vantage point, and where I look at it as a parent and as an entrepreneur, is that cannot wait for people to figure things out. We have to basically get involved wherever we can, and ultimately, in the end, when I see the economic opportunity, the social change that has happened with the different places we've operated in, it's incredible. And it's something where in the end, if I look at it, that kid that you're talking about, those are the minds that are all over the world. And
Yeah.
it's fascinating what happens when a parent is involved with their child, sees and recognizes their own, I no longer can do anything because I am out of my league, and is willing to then put them and link them to someone who potentially could. That is really what it takes to get ahead. And ultimately, when I look at gaming and technology, the fact that this child is now 12, is with you, is learning, going places, you're right, because at that age right there, I mean, I was 13 years old when I got my first job. They thought I was 16. Thank God the computers didn't communicate at the time your social security number. You know, that's how I did it.
Yeah.
And basically there you go. And it took off. But this is the thing. It's like, every year and every moment that I think a child invests into themselves and the parents support them, and especially when it comes to technology, I swear you're adding 10% onto their wages, because in the end of the day, they get to a moment in time where they're so fluent that it's almost just, it's as simple as talking. And that is where we want the children to be. At the same time, the soft skills matter, because in the end, if it's a non-communicative person, which I've worked with pure genius, utter geniuses, but they couldn't communicate out of a paper bag, they were useless. And that's the problem. So this is the balance, right? So I know there
Mm.
are parents out there that are like, "Oh, you're behind your screen. You're becoming a mindless automaton," or if they even say it that way. But they're like, put it down.
Automaton is kind of a nerdy
Yeah,
word. Yeah,
it is a
no.
bit nerdy. Probably like you're becoming, I don't know, like a box. I don't know what people say. But the thing is, in the end, there is a truth behind this, and there is a balance. And let me be very clear: I am not advocating for throw your kid an iPad and don't let them be raised by Apple. That is not what I'm saying,
Yeah.
because there has to be an outside. There has to be that soft skill interaction. There has to be that ability to problem solve, but problem solve people. Because honestly, that's the most complicated. The most dangerous game is that.
Oh yeah.
So this is the thing, and I would be very disingenuous if I didn't sit down and tell parents that, in my own home, I restrict how much time my kids spend behind screens by basically making sure that they do other things, physical activities, going out, communicating, spending time at the breakfast table talking. Granted, I run a business and my daughter will take my phone away from me and she says, "Dad, why don't you pay attention?" And I'm like, "You're right." Because
A
it's two-way street, right? It's
little
not,
bit of karmic justice there.
yeah, a lot of justice. She's 6 years old and she's like, "Hey, stop doing that." But at the same time, it comes down to a simple thing: everything in moderation. And I think that is something where in our industries, and especially in technology, especially with what's happening with technology and the way it's shaping our lives, we kind of have to go back to that, because it's not good that technology is getting to a point where it basically can control aspects of life at the
And
same time.
behaviors and without you knowing about it, right?
Exactly, right? Exactly. And like that is a part where we do have to monitor it, and we do have to basically say, "Hey, you know what? There's a line." And that line needs to be set down. And this is a part where it's like, even if it can go against my own self-interest, the public good is better than my own self-interest, because in the end, I'm a part of society. And this
Yeah.
is the key thing. Society must remain, or else what are we then? A bunch of animals running around blowing things up? No, thank you. That
Yeah.
that we don't need that. So anyway,
That I love
that
that
was a
rant. It
while.
was so good. It was so good. Well, I have a bunch of questions, but I think maybe we should put them off to a later date. I think you've got so many stories, and you said you have 180 people working there. They're being around the planet, right?
Yeah, around the world.
It might be interesting to do a follow up in a year or something to see what y'all are working on. But right now, y'all have made a game, Bake and Switch. It's a it's a it's a kind of a crazy game. It's super cute. It was actually pretty fun. I just played the demo about an hour
Excellent.
ago.
Yeah.
So you can check that out on Nintendo Switch and Steam as well. Is that right?
Correct. Nintendo Switch and Steam, and some new platforms coming soon. So
Okay.
it's definitely something. It's a great game to play with your kids, and really just to play with people in general. It's a couch
Yeah.
co-op, so multiplayer, a lot of fun. It's not insane, but it's just a lot of fast play and easy to understand. So
It doesn't take itself too serious. It's like kind of
yeah.
cute and cuddly, and the music's real goofy. I love it. Yeah.
I'm
So
glad you like it.
Yeah, well, me too, because I don't like lying. So, like,
Well, that's good. You and I have a lot in common. I mean, it's well, we came from the same place. Go figure.
we literally
Okay,
did.
so yeah, we
So,
literally did. This is
uh,
wow.
that is
you know,
so funny. Well,
yeah.
absolute pleasure having you on. If there is a place that you would like people to reach out to you, Twitter, LinkedIn, is there, if they have any
Yeah,
more questions?
yeah, no, absolutely, and I'm happy to. Just hit me up on Twitter at StarvUp is where I roam, and website starvup.com, stuff there. Then of course check out Streamline Media Group's website and our
Hmm.
games. And as always, I would just say everything. For parents, support your kids. They have talent. They have talent in technology, talent in wanting to make games, talent in art. Support it. I mean, in the end of the day, these are things that need to be there anyway. And then for all the kids out there, just keep trying, because in the end, that's all it takes. You have to put the time and effort into everything, but you will achieve what you want by being very focused and not giving up. So please definitely do that. And if you have any questions, hit me up on Twitter and I'm happy to answer them.
All right, sounds good. Well, until next time, which I hope there will be a next time if we keep going with the podcast anyway.
Absolutely,
And
man. Anytime,
good
hit me up.
good luck in your future endeavors. I'll see if I can send some employees to you eventually. Sometime that might happen where we have coder kids instructors who then kind of graduate college and they're looking for real jobs that are not
Well,
just like summer camp jobs. And
no, no. I mean, please do, because I would tell you something. In Malaysia, we have participated several years with the government in a thing called basically Digital Ninja. And what
okay,
the Digital Ninja was a program that focused on kids as young as 13 and
okay,
basically sent them on internships to companies to learn how to do specific things in technology.
mm,
And for I think 5 years, we had kids from basically interested in making games, and we would basically teach them how to use the technology tools and support them. So I think this is something where, for what you're doing, getting relationships and building them up with industry players within the games industry and technology is what it's about, because real world will always be something that is beyond basically what we can do behind a classroom. And I think
yeah,
that also just creates that kind of aspirational goal. So
for
I
sure.
think what you're doing is awesome, man. So you know what, keep on, and I wish you success and expand your business and grow it, and make it happen.
Yeah, well, it's all about trying to give parents something better every year, and the coronavirus through everything we had online. And now we're coming back in person in like the Houston area, but we're always going to have that online component going forward. And so it really forced us into a tight spot, but helped us create something kind of hopefully useful and beautiful. And Yeah, we'll see going forward. That I don't expect, and I hope that it will get less hectic. Just politics and the whole world being all crazy, but I kind of don't think it will. So, just adapting the best that we can and serving our customers the best that we can and adapting. Parents have had, and this is kind of an interesting thing, having an ear to the ground. Parents have had incredible ideas. They wanted a video editing class, so we did a video editing class and it did really well. And then, we wanted a website building class and, that went really well. So I think just the soft skills are useful not only in education, not only in business, but in getting what you want and talking to people and seeing if there are some solutions in between. So anyway, feel free to reach out to Alexander. You know how to reach out to us, and we'll put those in the show notes. Until next time, thanks so much.
Take it easy. Thank you.